your heart. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 through 11. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, Here I am, or Here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. That's Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 through 11. I've worked in politics, prison, and pastoring, and there weren't a lot of differences between the three. Sure, the work on the surface seems quite different, but the people were the same. Most people were angling, willing to throw someone else under the bus or cut corners in order to get their way. You've seen people like this in church too. They pay lip service to God, show up at church when it's convenient, and know the right things to do and say to look like a Christian, but under the mask, they're far from God. They may even give big checks and cite some Bible passages and know all the right people, but they don't know the living God. There's no fruit in their lives. I could seriously share countless stories of individuals who have sat in my office looking from the outside like they had it all together. However, when their lives were unraveling, they had to admit that they were clearly aiming at the wrong target. Not only were they aiming at the wrong target, they admitted to their deception, faking it to make it, and that they had no real relationship with God. They were pretty fruit trees with no fruit. Not only were they not producing fruit, but their root system was shallow and lacked the necessary ingredients to sustain them. Their pretty little fruit tree was about to die a horrible death of starvation. Their faith was pseudo faith, a faith built on fake granules of sand, all show and no go. That kind of faith is worthless, and God tells us so. God tells the prophet Isaiah to call out his people on their religious practices of fasting. They were fasting according to the law, but their hearts were far from God. While they were going through the motions of fasting, the people were ignoring God's laws, oppressing their workers, and quarreling and physically fighting with each other. All the while, they were sitting around in sackcloth and ashes and bowing their heads in humility. It was all a show, and God was sick of it. Then God paints a beautiful picture of what a true fast is, and he calls them to it. God says, You want to really fast? Then loose the chains of injustice for someone else. Provide food or shelter or clothing to someone else. God says, If you do that, then you will be like the sun breaking at dawn, bringing God's healing and restoration with you to the world. A true fast is when our lack of food creates an abundance of life for others. Remember Hobby Lobby CEO David Green's comments at the commencement ceremony? If you're very successful and you're not seeing people, whatever you're doing out there, coming to know the Lord, you really got to ask if you're doing anything that's going to help for eternity. A blessing to those around you. Let's come back to Daniel. He fasts from meat in chapter 1 and from food in chapter 9. In both cases, Daniel's fast is true because it brings God's blessing upon the people around him. The enemies who carried him into exile receive God's blessing, and in both cases, with different kings, they end up worshiping Daniel's God. Daniel doesn't fast to look spiritual or because it's the best political move. In both cases, it's the opposite. He fasts because his heart is focused upon God, and when his integrity is challenged, he doubles down on his devotion. Make sure your fast is focused on bringing out true devotion from the inner parts of your life and creating an abundance of life for others, not just a religious exercise. Amen. I hope you all enjoyed that devotional. I hope that all is going well with you on your fast. We have just a few days left. Even if you haven't gotten on board, today is the day. You can jump on board right now and fast with us these last few days. I love you all, and I'll see you all very soon.